Hi everyone, hello. Okay, so we're going to start working on the top part of the speaker, and the way we're going to achieve that is by applying a displacement map on top of the speaker polygons. So firstly, let me just save an incremental version of this. Here we go. Okay, so what we're first going to do is get out of the subdivision surface, highlight the polygon section that we want to apply the UV map on. So let's just do that now, which is there. Next, what we want to do is we want to split away from the rest of the object. Why would we want to do that? Well, when you apply the subsurface action on the speaker, it would creep into the actual displacement map itself, and it would deform it. So we want to make sure that it doesn't do that. So the way to ensure that doesn't happen is by ensuring that the surface where we're going to apply the displacement map is separate from the rest of the speaker geometry. So what we're going to do here now is right button click, and we're going to do a split. Now you're going to see on the right hand side, this is the original speaker, so this is all the speaker everywhere else, and this is just the polygons at the very top. So let's just rename this so we don't forget what this is, and we're just going to call this the top, right? Okay, great. Now that we've done that, we can move to the next part. The next part is doing some UV editing. So we can access UV editing through the layouts at the top. So we've got script, standard, model, UV edit. So if we go ahead, we can click that and access this screen. You can do that also by going to Windows and go to texture editor map. For now, we're going to just follow the layouts that are there in front of us. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to select the actual speaker.top object that we just created. So this particular polygon object that we've just created, speaker.top. So make sure that's clicked. Make sure that you're in the polygon mode, and ensure that your brush selection's on. So you click it here on the right hand side. This is the UV map. So what we're going to do is we are going to unwrap the UV map by clicking this button. Now that we've done that, that's great. Next, what we need to do is make sure that we fit it to the canvas. So this is the canvas that we're going to basically utilize, and it's at a specific resolution that we need to basically overlay and map our buttons, our icons on top of. Now, what do those icons look like? Now, I've attached it to the resources for this session, and this is how it looks like. This is the actual bump map that we are going to use. So what I did is I traced this. It's a little bit rough, but it works. It's unless you get really close, and you can actually see how horrible how horrible of a job I've done. But at the end of the day, it's enough to give us the displacement map that we need to basically overlay on top of our speaker. So so this is the bump map. It's in your resources, and you can access this from there. Now let's move on. So we're going to overlay that on top of this. So the first thing we need to now do is create a texture, right? So what we're going to do is not hit this file, but hit this one here. So when we hit this, we go to create new texture. Once we do that, we're just going to basically give it a texture name. Let's call this texture 01. And we are going to save it. Let's call it 01-01. And it should be at this width, which is 1024, and we're just going to basically hit OK. Once we've done that, it's created a texture map. Now what we need to do is create a UV mesh layer, which is going to basically give us this. Now, what's important here is to know that where these lines are converging, you can see them here on the right hand side, and this is how you can orientate yourself when you're actually placing this item on top. You can basically see where you need to orientate that. Now, if I go to the top view, let me scroll right in. you can see this is where we want to have the plus and the minus and the fast and the play and the pause, and you want to have the microphone icon over here. So that means that everything on this side is where this is where you want to have your plus and your minus and your microphone icon here. So that's a good way to just make sure that you can orientate your map in the correct direction. So these lines helped us a little bit in identifying that. So next, what we need to do is make sure we create a layer mesh, which we did. And now what we want to do is we want to save the texture as a PSD file, which is a Photoshop file. Click OK, and then we can basically save it anywhere we wish. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to open it up in Photoshop. So we're going to open our bump map in Photoshop, and we're going to also open the new texture map here. So this is our texture map, and this is our bump asset that we just created. So I'm just going to basically Control A, copy. Oh, let me undo that. I'm going to copy that and bring it across here. Now remember, this is where our front is, and this is where we want the microphone. So we're just going to spin this around. We are going to stretch it out a bit, hold Shift, so you keep the proportion right. And that looks about right. Might need to level it up a little bit. There. Bring it a bit closer. Okay. You can use the edges or here and here to see if they're parallel. Yeah. I mean, there's many ways to do this. This is one of them. Probably not the best way, but it is. But it works. You can get really clever with this as well. But yeah, it's all about timing. Okay. And just click OK. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to remove everything except the actual final review, which is layer 1, which is what we've put the asset on top of. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to flatten the image. So we're going to flatten it so it's black and white, and we are going to export it as a PNG. And now back in Cinema 4D, we're going to go back to the standard layout. And from here, we are going to access the material manager, and we're going to create a new material, and we should have RS material here. Now, if you didn't have one before, it would just increments 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So it doesn't matter which one you select. Click that one. And now this is the view that you're going to get. Let me just expand that window, move things here to the right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a texture. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Click the plus button, texture. And here we're going to basically add the path to the new texture map that we just created. Okay, now this is going to feed into the bump map of this particular material, but we also need to give this material, well, we could keep the same color, but we could also feed it another texture, which we will later on anyhow. For now, I'm just going to keep it the way it is, and I'm just going to feed this texture into the bump map of the RS material, which is here. Okay, let me just make sure I did that correctly. And here to the bump map. Okay, so if you expand this, there it is. So now you can actually see that there's a little bump map happening here against this particular image. So now I can close this, and I'm going to drag this on top of the speaker.top, and it should overlay on top of it straight away. It's not quite centered, so we could probably shift a little bit to the left or to the right. But for now, let's just have a look at what it's done. So let's just go back to perspective view. And there it is. Okay, so we've applied the texture and the displacement map to the actual top of the speaker. So let's have a look at how that looks like in the render. Press play, and here it is. Now, the reason why we're getting these lines is it's because of the reflections of the material that we've applied here, which isn't right? So these are the textures that we're getting, right? So what we should do is go back to the material, right? And from here, right, we need to also ensure that we are using a bump map, not feeding just the texture into the bump map of the material, but we need to convert this texture into a bump map. And the way we're going to do that is by bringing in a bump map node. Okay, so this is the bump map node. So we're going to double click. Now we're going to feed the output of the texture bump map, which we created, into the input of the bump map node, and the output of the bump map node into the bump map of the RS texture. So notice how that's made a huge significant change. So now let's close this and have a look at, so you can see straight away now how the bump map works. Okay, so it's definitely doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, now I don't really like this reflective texture, so I'm going to basically go back into the RS material, and I am going to reduce, just by clicking the RS material, I'm just going to reduce the reflection so it's a little bit less reflective, so it's not bouncing all the light. So here it is. So there it is. So that's the bump map that we've just applied. Now, as I said, it's not quite centered, right? So we could probably do some more work around that, but for what we're trying to achieve here, it's sufficient and it works. Okay, so now the next thing what we need to do is feed this a proper material. So for now, given the fact that we've just used this material for everything, what we can do is essentially duplicate this material as such, remove the bump maps, close it, and just apply it to the rest of the speaker so it looks uniform. There we go. Now ensure the subdivision is on, and there we have it. Okay, so this is the speaker the way it is at the moment. Let me just expand this window so it's more clearer as to what that looks like. There it is. Okay, so now you can see the bump map is on the top. We've got the indentation down the bottom, got an indentation at the top. We've got the buttons there, and all that's left is now for the grid here. Let me just show you again. So we need to basically apply this grid and then the signage, a few little bumps here for the stand, and we are almost there. And then we're going to go ahead with the lights, etc. Okay, guys. Well, that's how you add a displacement map to simulate the buttons on top of the speaker. Thank you. Bye for now.